Sorry, I got a phone call, and that kind of stopped the YouTube video. I thought maybe it would freeze it, and then it would, I could resume, but I can't. And I have to get the hang of all this because I'm sure the way I'm looking at the camera in my car is not the right way to do it. I'm sure it's making me look fatter, older, and more wrinkled, but that's life in the big city. In any event, the point I was making in part one a few minutes ago was that I realized after the election in November that, well, not the election, the installation, I should say, because obviously Trump didn't win in a democratic sense of the word. He lost the popular vote. He lost a majority of votes. But, obviously the way our despicable system works, he got the gig because he got obviously the right number of electoral votes, and he won where he needed to win. But in any event, that's a separate issue. Bottom line is, what I recognized is that I'm not a liberal. I'm not a left-winger. I'm really a radical, and I don't know if I would qualify because I'm no expert. I don't know if I'm a socialist or a communist or a Marxist, but I know that I'm not a liberal, and I know that I'm not a left-winger, unless you say extreme left-wing, because the loss of the election led me to realize that I am as much a victim of the marketing of this country and our economic system and our political system as anybody else. And I fell for President Obama in 2008 during the beginning of the meltdown. And it's true. The capitalist system that has been raping the American people for the last many, many years, certainly accelerating over the last 30 or 40 years, was brilliant in taking everyone's eye off the ball while our 401ks were being chopped in half, while the value of our homes was being chopped by 20 or 30%, while people were facing foreclosure and being thrown out of their homes after being convinced to take these mortgages and all the rest. What I realized is that I consider myself a pretty bright guy, but I was just as susceptible as so many other people to the nice, shiny object. And in 2008, the shiny object was, oh my God, we might elect the first African American. And people like me, liberals, lefties, we love making history, and we love this unrelated to the economic system. We love the whole arc of the moral universe is long and it bends toward justice. And of course, so when we can participate in electing Barack Obama, or we could continue the progress by electing a Hillary Clinton or an Elizabeth Warren, it wouldn't really matter who. Maybe it'd be Kamala Harris, who knows. But the bottom line is, we love that. And that took our eye off the ball because President Obama then ran a very competitive race and he unseated Mrs. Clinton, which was a surprise. And then you got McCain picking Sarah Palin, and what would that lead to, and all the rest. And while the system with one hand was ripping us off and further raping the American people, we all were following the bouncing ball. Well, we weren't following the bouncing ball. We were following the shiny object of electing the first black president. And now that Hillary lost, although she actually won, but in any event, now that Hillary didn't get the job, the truth of it is, I feel almost liberated and free to say I think our system is a fraud. And quite honestly, when you look at it, I'm still an admirer of Hillary Clinton. She's a very smart woman. Many of her accomplishments were on merit. I mean, she didn't get into Wellesley because she was married to Bill Clinton, or a child of a famous or wealthy family. She didn't get into Yale Law School because she knew Bill Clinton. So, in many respects, her accomplishments are real and they're substantial and they're all merit. And she is a smart woman. I don't think too many people, I've never heard anybody anyway, question whether that's true. Whether or not she got her jobs, as a U.S. Senator and obviously as Secretary of State because she had been the First Lady, there's something that could be said for that. particularly the Senate, maybe not the First Lady spot, because after all, in fairness to her, I'm sorry, not the First Lady, the Secretary of State spot, because in fairness to her, that came after she had been a senator for 8 years and had won re-election and had run for president and had come very, very close with the 18 million cracks in the ceiling, and then Obama picked her. So I don't know that was because of Bill Clinton. But in any event, while I'm an admirer of Hillary Clinton's, I realize full well that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Michael Dukakis and Walter Mondale and Al Gore and Bill Bradley and, I don't know, keep naming them, Andrew Cuomo and Cory Booker, these are all people that want to put a nice, soft, velvet, gentle cover on the reality that for 95, I won't even say 98, I'm going to say 95% of the American people, things have not gotten better in many respects. Not all. And it's very hard to make these broad-based generalizations because obviously there are nuances to everything if you want to respect nuance and facts and that kind of thing. But the truth of it is, for most people in this country, it doesn't really matter whether Trump is president or whether Hillary was president. And I feel like I said earlier, liberated that I can tell people, or tell the world, as it were, that I think our system is a bit of a fraud, and I almost am happy about what's happening with the healthcare repeal, because Obamacare, in many respects, and again, there was some progress made, no question about it. If you want to get to the margins of things, there's no doubt there was some progress made. But the truth of it is that for the middle class, particularly for people buying their own policy, the reality is, with the enormous deductibles and the co-payments and the cost of drugs and all the rest, that I don't know that we did so well. I'm proud of the expansion of Medicaid, although the quality of care that Medicaid recipients get is questionable. But listen, it was certainly preferable to what was in existence before. But the truth of it is that it was such politically, it was a gigantic accomplishment. Gigantic. 60 votes in the Senate on Christmas Eve in 2009 to break the filibuster. I mean, I understand all the mechanics. We'll get to that whole issue of 60 votes in a Senate where there's 2 senators from every state. So, you know, there are 4 senators from Montana and Ohio and Idaho. It's really another fraud and part of our entire joke of a system, make-believe democracy. But in any event, while I recognize that Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, was an accomplishment politically, mechanically, legislatively, getting it through, part of me realized, well, not part of me, I just realized that it's a bit of a nothing. It's not single payer. It didn't lower the cost for most Americans. If you were super poor and you qualify for Medicaid where you didn't before, that's a little bit of an improvement. But for the overwhelming number of people, you're buying policies, and the way it's working with deductibles and co-payments, you're still behind the 8 ball. And I don't know that it's of any great benefit. So let them rip it up. Let them tear it up. Let them own it. It'll be a disaster. I mean, any alternative to Obamacare that isn't Medicare for all or single payer will make matters much worse for the American people, broadly speaking. And that's really what started me on this whole YouTube thing. Is I was reading an article that the average Trump voter versus the average Hillary voter, interestingly, the average Trump voter stands to lose a lot more from the repeal and replace than the Hillary voter. Because the Hillary voter tended to be wealthy and in the enclaves in Alexandria, Virginia, and New York, and California, and the East and West Coast. And he or she is going to get an enormous cut in their taxes if they're wealthy, by the repeal of Obamacare. Whereas the average Joe from Kentucky is going to get somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000 less a year in tax credits. I believe people that are going to get $1,000 less a year in tax credits voted for Trump by 7 points over Clinton, and those who are going to get $5,000 less a year in tax credits voted for Trump by 23 points. So there's a part of me or people that says, good, screw them. Let them get nailed by the reform. And then there are people like me that say, well, listen, it's just going to be a further screwing of the middle and lower classes. And that really is a tragedy, because they do have a lot to be upset about and a lot to be angry about. I'm going to sign off right now because I'm just starting to learn this whole little YouTube thing and how to present it properly, and I'm not really pleased with the way it's going. So let me revamp, and I will be back at some point. Thank you. And by the way, it's Saturday. What's today? I guess March 11th. Thanks for listening.